So today is the 25th of November, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and it marks the beginning of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, an annual international campaign. And to start off this campaign, and we'll have these conversations for the next 16 days, every other day, we have Zaha Indimuli. Zaha is very many things. Tonight we are together, Senior. On The Last Word.
Yes,
she's a co-host of The Last Word, but on this other side, she is an injector. She's very many things. At national level, you coordinate a campaign, the End Femicide KE, and many other things. You'll tell us all about it for the next 50 minutes or so. Yeah. But first, Jano, the day's quote.
I have the day's quote. Zaha, it's good to have you in studio. Oyeronke Oyewumi once said, inequality is not natural, it is organized.
Please tell us who she is.
Yes.
Fun enough, I have it in my book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's something we also have to correlate. Like, it's too engineered.
It's too engineered. Do you want to know who she is? Yes. She's a Nigerian gender scholar and full professor of sociology in university. Stony Brook University, more specifically. But it's organized and engineered, right? Inequality.
Yep. It subsequently continues to fuel other perspectives economically, because a lot of capitalistic systems very much fuel and make a lot of money out of the literal existence of oppression against women. And everything about us is so commercialized. Our beauty, our bodies, like, we are the most oppressed group in the world. So just that reality, and when we get into the statistics, is so fascinating that everything exists to keep a woman in a box of oppression, however you look at it. It's very strange.
Yeah,
very strange.
It's strange when you live in this body. The more I'm knowing it. You know, my upbringing, and I think I'm one of the few, because you realize over time it's a privilege to grow up in a safe environment. It's actually a privilege.
Very big.
Whether it was my father, brothers, who I dated, it was always a safe space. It's when I started working Hapa Nairobi, and I was just like, oh, all of a sudden, to Zaha's point, it's your body, whatever. It's not about what you bring to the table. It starts with, you know, what can I draw from you? How can I make you feel less than me? I learned it much later on. So I was in Delulu, but there's a lot of safe spaces. But I think to Zaha's point, but why do people struggle with that concept? Zaha, why do people continue to fight back against some of what you've said? They're like, no, but women have opportunities now and women are not as oppressed. What do you mean? Which world are we living in?
Which is very much an illusion. We're counting almost hundreds of years before we ever find an essence of equality in the world, right? And just by nature of that, yet we form 49.7% of the population in the globe is radically insane. So I think people have, or rather the systems, and I keep saying, patriarchy does not just oppress men, it oppresses women, it oppresses men more. And men are utilized to fuel this engine that continues to put women in a cascade of thinking, you are less when you give birth, you are less when you seek healthcare, you are less when you want safety, you are less to get a job, you are less to get an education. We're living in a continent where in some places in West Africa, they're still fighting child marriages right now. So it's a constant array of the fact that we can see members of parliament in Somalia saying no to putting policies that prevent children from being married. So existentially, it has formulated men to believe that their masculinity and equality to strength is violent. And so everything that surrounds how men interact with women on a daily basis is extremely violent, either emotionally, physically, or psychologically, that we have convenings of men that batter and talk about their wives as trash bags, right? And so that disconnect, we can easily relate it to the fact that when you go to high schools, for example, the strongest boy in the school is the one who can bully and beat everyone the most. So the cascade and the structures that exist around young men and just men in general is that violence is very much a form of predominant masculine traits. So how then do they relate on a day-to-day basis with the rest of the genders when they do not know any other language of communication other than that which is violent? And then you come into a system that exists to remind you, you know, women are not supposed to be in these positions of power. My mother is being whooped by my father since I was a child, and when I intervened, I was reminded I'm not being a man enough in the household. And so the consolidation and suppression of these emotions have made men just create this shell whereby violence And it's so internalized as well, because, you know, most of the time when I say violence is so internalized with men, most people think it's fist fighting. It's just a literal reality that you can give an excuse as to why a woman is extremely different from you, yet the only difference is on genders, right? So the disparity is the fact that there's such a far-end thinking that women are just not women, are human enough. They're different. They're supposed to be in the kitchen. I mean, look at our children's jokes. It's very different. It's very different. So before we pull out from that method of thinking, and just to create spaces where young men and men in general can start looking at women as equal human beings, it's a long way.
Right. There's that, I'm trying to remember who the quote is by, but it's just basically, feminism is the radical notion that women are people.
Literally.
Radical. Let's get crazy.
Yeah.
Let me start with, when we talk about gender-based violence, we're marking 16 days, and we'll talk about, Jan will give us a little bit of the origin of the 16 days, and we'll talk about that and why these days are important, the strides we're making. But I want to get into the pyramid of gender-based violence, because I think for a lot of people, it's at the extremes that they realize there's a problem.
Yeah.
And the extreme is femicide, the extreme is battery, it's assault, it's all of that. But then when you try and push back against language, against the manosphere,
The manosphere.
Yeah. It's Jano's video that I was watching that really educated me this weekend. But yeah, when you try and push back against that, you're told, you're suppressing freedom of expression, or you're being too woke and things like that. So walk me through what that pyramid looks like.
So gender-based violence, just historically, is not an additive. It is so layered. It's relational. It's structural. Like, it is so engineered, like we were saying earlier. It's so well organized that, women almost don't have a breakthrough. Like, anywhere you look, there's no difference. And then I feel like most of the time, especially now this is a national discussion, it's important for us to recognize GBV and femicide is costing Kenya 46 billion yearly. And that is direct into medical healthcare, and it is out-of-pocket money from survivors. And then we're talking about 1.1% of the GDP fully drained because we have the existence of gender-based violence and femicide. But as we're looking towards just fully focusing on what GBV actually means, when you think through that every 10 minutes, like for the 10 minutes we've been here, a woman is dead somewhere. And not just dead, they're probably killed, they have been raped, they have been battered. And like I was saying in the beginning, we are the largest oppressed group in the world. 1 in 3 women worldwide have experienced sexual violence. Like in every 3 women you walk with, one has.
I often find that to be a misrepresentation. I think it is probably closer to half.
Literally.
Because you're depending on the number of women who did know that they experienced violence of a sort and who said it.
Or reported it. Yeah.
But something interesting that continues to fuel gender-based violence. So there's a survey that was done, and it gave us 90% of people have bias against women. Just by literal thought. Before I even get into the discrimination analysis, 90% of people have bias, and women included. People meaning everybody.
So 90% of us here have bias against women.
Yes, a form of bias.
Explain.
So it can either be manifested physically, where you either discriminate or cause an essence of violence. It's emotional, whereby when you're engaging with a woman, you have to think through, are you on my level for this type of communication? But there's also a concept we call internalized oppression. And this is basically one's belief in the lies of the oppressor and the status of themselves as inferior. So when we talk about this bias, it means even amongst women, we tend to look at each other as oppressed persons. So when I'm talking to my fellow woman, depending on where I'm at in the status quo, it directly synergizes with how I directly deal with a woman. So that's why it's a 90%. So it literally, when you have the word woman in your head, you have to think through.
Give us an example of that. Woman to woman. That bias. Yeah, what does that look like?
It can appear in so many places. I mean, let's go straight to a good example would be in our mothers when they go to a chama. How I will talk to a woman who is married in the chama versus how I will talk to a woman who is not married or divorced is completely different. And those are the formal biases. And so when this woman who's unmarried starts to bring issues that she's going through, the first continual sentence after that would be, but you're not married. So we don't have a structure and a culture of creating spaces of equality, even in the sense of communication and conversation, because there's an internalized bias that since we are so oppressed, there's an element of your oppression that is lesser than my own element of oppression, as much as they're significantly the same.
Like, I'm better than you because I'm partnered.
Yes.
I'm less,
I'm better than you because I go to work.
Yes.
I'm better than you. So if we are to go with a 90%, which I'd like to understand how we arrive at the 90% of everybody has a bias against women, I'd also like to hear what comparative percentage of bias do you have against men? Whether you're men against men or women against men. But also, if we're going by that figure, are we bringing in the oppression bit as an explainer or as part of this statistic? I think no, because we are already oppressed, so now I'm already looking at you as less oppressed than me. This is a secondary part of this statistic, isn't it?
Is it?
Because the bit here is, if the bias is there on or against the woman, it's on. I'm judging you from various angles. I'm judging you from how I'm interacting with you. So, where are you on the social ladder versus where am I? If you're higher than me on the social ladder, man or woman, I'll have some different level of respect.
Yeah.
If you're lower than me, I'll have different level of respect. If you're what we quantify as success, you're more successful than I am in whatever field.
Yeah.
I'll give you a different kind of treatment. So there's that bias. So first question is, give me a comparison between that 90% are biased against women versus what percentage are biased against men, and whether we see that this is it, and then explain to me why we're bringing in the oppressed because we are oppressed bit.
So I will not lie to you that as a feminist I have any statistics in comparison towards men, but the forms of biases against men that do come, which you've actually mentioned some of them, is that even amongst men, the situation of status success is also in the aspect that connects to a woman secondarily. So why this bias continues to overstretch is because essentially the structures that continue to showcase a successful man are attached to a woman somehow, or a girl. So it's either a wife, a daughter, a son too. And so these biases, when you look at it from the women's lens, often when we're looking at men, when you're looking for a partner, for example, you're looking at a standard, right? A successful, a safe, an educated, a man who can be able to communicate. And one of the significant differences that we see is that the association of difference between men and women is that we have characters that come within women that look up to men who have worked on themselves and are emotionally, psychologically intelligent and have sort of taken care of themselves. But the same comparisons that when it comes to women, it's not to a standard that looks up to women, it's to a standard that degrades them. And so this creates a very big flat line in that we can never have discussions when it comes to men that degrades you. Like, it's very difficult.
Well, you actually have.
Yes.
Listen, when you've looked at this person, whether they are taking care of themselves, you're basically saying that the one who doesn't look like they're taking care of themselves, you're degrading them.
How? How, Eric?
Because you're already judging them by their
think
level
there's a
of
difference between
by your level of a conception of success.
Yeah.
Does this person look like they are well put together?
Yeah.
Like they are responsible?
Yeah.
Like they, have an education, they have a career, they have an income, they have, a house that they're going to, that they conduct themselves in a certain manner, that they would be accepted in my social circles.
100%.
All those things. Which means that the one that doesn't, you're already degrading them.
100%, Eric.
Yes?
But
which is the same way I would say that if you're talking about here the opposite gender, so the man who's looking at this woman would also be looking at that woman from that angle. They're socially constructed. It's a social construct.
On the difference between those two forms of looking down or
I haven't explained the second one.
Okay.
Sorry.
Discrimination.
Let me explain it yet. So I'm just going by Zaha's explanation and extrapolating it.
Yeah.
So if this is what we're saying, the bias, we are calling this as a bias. Then the man will be looking at the woman with a certain lens. So how do you conduct yourself? who are you? How do you dress? How do you talk? Depending on where you come from, you know, what kind of family do you come from, and all those kind of things. Which means that the ones who don't tick many, you're marking, you're grading. We live in a world where we grade each other. Whether I'm grading you as a woman or I'm grading you as a man, I'm grading you as a person. I'm just grading you.
True.
So now, if we say that there's a 90% grading by all of women, then there's also maybe there's a comparatively same
100%
level of grading against men.
Can I paint a picture for you, Eric, and just so that we can be able to get into depth of your question? So often with these comparisons and biases that you have actually raised, which are very significant in that, you know, of course, like I had said from the beginning, the comparative bias when it comes to men is to a particular standard, right? Because the structures continue to exist to produce those type of qualities of men, while the structures that are able to work close in hand with women do not necessarily produce the same structures. But who bears consequences of failure as well? Men are often, it's sort of like you are allowed some grace to not be well put together, to be going through stuff, you know, to be different, to not be married, to not go to school. The weight and the burden of some of these comparison biases on when it comes to women. I think generally, if I put a man and a woman here, Eric, and it's women in all their diversity, and we speak about an unmarried man vis-a-vis an unmarried woman, the consequences and the punishments that are bad to the unmarried woman are very significantly heavier and very different from what an unmarried man would symbolize in the same. So for the unmarried man, it will definitely look like, you know, he's focusing on work, he's focusing on his education, his career, he's not ready, right? But for the woman, it is a punishable element that, you know, you are unmarried because you are not worthy of one, or also why are you not married? Or if you are facing or going through a divorce, like the punishments that we see these consequences having is what reflects to the structures that we're trying to debunk.
I 100% agree with you. There's a perspective. Is the man who does not have material wealth, demonstrable success, is treated exactly the same way in very many aspects as this woman. So society judges a woman because she's a nurturer, she's a carer, she's all as a family person. So do you have a family?
Which is very problematic, but I hear you.
Problematic. I'm saying society judges. Society judges man as a provider. If you have nothing, then you are already placed at a certain level. Your worth in this community is diminished.
Does judge. My point was what Zaha was saying, which is just that it is it's whether or not there are structures that exist to enable your worst or best. So in the marriage example, to be married as a man, you just require to be a man. For the most part, the bar is not very high. To be marriage material for a woman requires a lot more. And on the flip side, what you've said, material, I'm not
you have just ignored what I've just said.
No, I'm not ignoring.
The one basic thing for a man is material wealth. To be marriageable as a man, you must have something.
You don't actually. There are plenty of married men who have nothing.
You're a high value man, Eric.
Take a guy to your home,
there are
and the mom will be looking at this guy.
Men who have nothing.
So he lives in your house. Does he work? He doesn't work.
There are plenty of married men who have nothing. Yes. I'm saying it is not. What should I say? Enforced to the same level. I think that's what Zaha's point was as well, which is the fact that society will judge you for being a man without financial means. Absolutely. But will it be consequential to you in the sense that you don't end up being married or don't start a family? Very unlikely. Yes. You will.
You know the point I'm trying to raise in all these things that I'm throwing pigeon among the cats, or cat among the pigeons, is perceptions.
100%.
Perceptions and perspectives.
We need
structures will enable.
Perceptions and perspectives.
Structures will enable even the men with nothing to function. For the other way around, for the woman who is not marriage material, not this, not that, it's the other way. There's nothing to shikilia you. There's no internal system propping
We're
you.
going to take a break. I will say, even as I'm listening,
it's heated up in the right direction.
It is. Zaha is smiling. I will say that however this conversation goes, and even if Eric says, or even now for men, if you don't have wealth, you are, it's unless you live in this body, it'll be it's almost impossible
to understand
the level
100%.
of the disadvantages that come against you because you are a woman. Validating that, yes, those pressures exist. In fact, now more at a worse scale.
Unless you live in the other's body,
but
you will not understand there.
Yeah.
Unless you are in there, you will not understand.
But
however, the issue is gender-based violence.
Exactly, and how that still plays a part.
Only one's body is threatened
more than the other.
These structures.
Yes, that's what I was actually coming to. At the end of the day, however we look at the bodies, one body is more in harm's way by simply being in that body. We're going to come back. We have Zaha Indimuli. We'll come back and talk a little bit about the 16 days of activism, the onset of, it also just evolved, right? Violence. Now there's technology facilitated gender-based violence, and how at the end of this we can take a look at saying, what's that one fundamental thing that we need to do that really gets us closer to pushing back against GBV. It may not be something that we can answer today, but maybe we can get closer to understanding what it is. It's coming up to 8:30. We are still in conversation with Zaha Indimuli as we kick off the 16 days of activism, November 25th till December 10th, which is Human Rights Day. And it's really a campaign to take stock of the patterns, to take stock of the systems and structures that enable these really harmful patterns and how they continue to evolve. That's the scariest bit. They continue to evolve. And then how we need to tackle it. I know the first thing that always comes to mind for me is not just naming it, but naming it as... the South African president the other day, naming it and saying, okay, we have a problem here. It's a national disaster. Because I think a deprioritization of this issue is what has escalated it. I always believe if you're not prioritizing it at a high level, you're sending a message that it's secondary. That's just something that I believe, and I think that's something that needs to be tackled. We were having a conversation, I'm sure we'll come back to it. We will come back to it because, by the way, it never ends, in the sense of, men also feeling that they also, I want to be seen as somebody who can also face inequality, right? And, Zaha said it. In fact, I always say inequality that exists across the board will affect everyone. We've seen it along tribal lines. You know what I mean? So even as a man, you will continue to face your inequalities. But if we're talking about violence against women and girls, I think there's a harmful element of not really erasing and not invalidating, but almost trying to put it at par when there really is a gender that's more in harm's way. And that's a fact. I think it's a fact that sometimes people struggle to sit with comfortably, but it's actually a fact. It's a fact that I can walk out of here and there's several million things that could happen to me because of who I am as a woman that would happen differently because somebody is a man. And I think when women say believe them, when women say listen to them, it's not to say we're not listening to you, it's to say hear me out, here's the data, here's the fact, and then say, okay, let's learn about it more. Tell me more. Okay, interesting. Okay, so then how does it affect people differently? Okay, then at the end say, what can I do?
How can I be an ally?
I feel like before we get into the depths of how did we find ourselves here, and I don't know if people understand when we say 1 billion women have experienced physically or sexually a form of gender-based violence. 1 billion people put together would fill this continent. So we're talking about everyone, everywhere, constantly having to hyperventilate when they think about leaving their homes. And we were doing statistics on our end, and I think even with Odipo Dev as well, and more than 70% of all these domestic violence cases are happening in our homes. So who exactly is in the home? It's the husbands, it's the partners, it's the boyfriends, it's the lovers. But a very interesting thing came up when I was doing a little bit of research on preparing to this. 77% of domestic violence related homicide happened during separation. So we're talking about a situation whereby the violence has occurred, the survivor has decided, I want to leave. And on choosing to leave, we have the murders happening on skyrocket, upon which the woman decides, I need to be away. And it says a very different perspective that, the violence is not just structured to the person you're living with on a daily basis. It's in this essence of ownership. Like by the time it's like I own you. So when you choose to go, the existence that you are not to supposedly live without me and therefore you walking out demands that I have immediate action, which is cause your death. And looking at it, reflecting to so many cultures around the continent, and even in Kenya as well, whereby we have this femicide and gender-based violence being used as a form of punishment, honorary killings, whereby it's a statement of record, where we're having victims of rape being married off to their own rapists. So again, like we were having this discussion, Eric, the systems are not designed to give a woman a break entirely. And it does not give a woman a break, but it also does not give a woman a space to rehabilitate herself. So you're looking at the fact that even when you're a victim, the society does not necessarily take you back, because you're a constant reminder that you were raped, you are impure, you are not supposed to be mingling with the rest of society, because you have this form of burden that you have to carry in your mind. I mean, we've seen people attacking pregnant women. Like, it's that bad that any formality of what a woman's existence looks like tends to have something to counter, and it's in our natural existence. So as you were saying, Janet, just existing in this body is such an extreme burden. And as we dive into the issues that continue to just put women in these situations, of course we have the political issues. We have colonial history of, you know, women's violence being used specifically during the colonial systems. We have seen what's happening in Sudan and Congo, whereby in the brink of war, sexual violence against women is being used to deter civilians, right? The discrimination is there, the femicide is there, but there's this point we keep raising that I'm starting to question, and I think I was having this discussion yesterday with a friend of mine. Economic injustice. I don't know if there's evidence of a society where economic equality has happened that we women can refer that will be the end of violence. You understand? So I don't know if economic justice is an excuse, once again, to allow perpetrators to exist, or it's a causant. Because we're being told hundreds of years will take us for women to have any essence of equality. So, meaning there is no relevant evidence that economic justice and economic equality will render the non-existence of violence. Maybe. And because we have seen both women in high spaces, high capitalistic jobs, high places of power continue to face the same brand.
You can't out-earn yourself from the patriarchy. Or
you really can't.
Yourself. That's true. But I do think of societies that do have fairly high, well-performing economies, good GDP per capita, good, systems, healthcare, social systems, all of that. They do have significantly lower rates of femicide and of gender-based violence, right?
So can I talk you through it?
Not exterminating, but certainly
100%,
reducing.
100%. So you notice the thing you have described is a good people-centered system.
Yes.
And when we usually say when you educate a woman, you educate a nation, it's very important, because often when you have systems that put women in a place where they are secure with their healthcare, meaning somebody can give birth, you have access to sexual reproductive health and rights, you are free of fear, you are free to exist, you can get a job, you can get education. Most of the remnants of putting and investing in women go back to societies. Because again, these women often in some places, and especially in developing countries, are given the margin to change into whatever dimensions they would want. So I can work, but when I'm pregnant, I'm given a free paid leave. Or when I'm working in the hospital, there's a security that ensures that I can get home safely. Like, the systems are structured to not only allow a woman to exist, but to also grow into the midst of what their success looks like. And that deliberately feels back into a reduction of this gender-based violence, a reduction of men's masculinity being pushed forefront with an economic bias as well. So you find the system, if it's built, not just centered, because we keep making women sound as if it's an additional layer to a part and parcel of an entire population.
It's just a people-centered.
When you have a people-centered system existing, it transcades not only just to women, but to children and the men that these women care for directly. So of course it translates to an economy that speaks sense to development. It becomes way easier.
So economic empowerment then can lead to?
So I think what I would want to reframe is economic justice will not end gender-based violence. People-centered economic systems will create a reduction of gender-based violence.
Okay, let's go with this. Step by step. A people-centered economic system is it going to create economic justice?
Yes, 100%.
So it will then create a reduction in gender-based violence.
Yes, it might.
So
It can,
economic
100%.
justice will create a reduction in gender-based violence.
So when we paraphrase it alone, which is
Yes.
exactly what I'm trying to say, when we make economic justice just looks like giving women access to loans or giving women more capitation into their work or investing in them, it's like I'm saying, let me throw money at this problem. It will be able to solve itself because women will feel an essence of empowerment.
Really.
But when you have an all-rounded system,
Okay.
yes,
So
yes.
you see, what if you take it from that point, then
Yeah.
you do what NGOs do. They take a word and then they come up with their own definition of it, and they implement it in 3-year programs. Give them money, open for them a market, and so on and so forth. But that's not economic justice.
Yeah.
We've just said economic justice is when it is designed for justice for all.
yeah.
Eh? So it's then what we are doing here is we are redefining the often used
Terms.
term.
Okay.
Which is the essence of this conversation,
Yeah.
Eric.
A fair, just economic system
Yes.
will end, or not end, will
Reduce.
significantly reduce
Yeah,
sexual and gender-based violence and femicide. I think we can all agree on that, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
but
it will
also
play.
just let's even just remove the justice part,
Yeah.
because I think when we say economic justice, we're giving a remnant ideology that inequality would be able to exist. It's just that you'll have a parameter of reporting, right?
Oh.
So I want us to look at economics as if everyone has gone to school, right, and everyone has a chance to go to school. When I'm talking about economics, I'm looking at the fact that investing in women or access to resources or just the essence of economics at large are being given not only on a silver plate but on an open, transparent plate that centralizes the existence of actual human beings.
Right, and it's economics. It's also just I think about countries like Iceland. No country is 100%.
Yeah.
But they have a forum every year because they have achieved the highest amount of equality, right, globally. And the reasons are very similar to what Zaha is saying. It's not even just about economic. It's just about seeing everyone as human, as equal.
Human,
because it starts with perception. And I think a lot of the time people don't get it's how you started this conversation.
Yeah.
You don't see me as an equal human. You just see me as an other.
Yeah.
And then after that, it informs how else I perceive you. Strong equality laws and enforcement, that's one. Representation of women leadership, which is also pushed by men.
Yeah.
Parental leave designed that fully includes men. This is a big one, and we've seen it in a lot of Nordic countries because it says we all need to be here for this child.
Yeah.
Not you take your 2 weeks and then go and then leave the rest of it.
Paternal leave.
Paternal leave 2 weeks. It's a joke. Direct and structured action against GBV. So it's integrated into national equality plans with prevention in schools, strict perpetrator removal laws, and specialized support services. This is according to the government of Iceland 2021 and UN Women. Active engagement of men and boys. Iceland's equality strategy includes programs that bring men into conversations on harmful norms. We can talk about all this, but as long as it's still a norm, in your head you're still like, but also violence prevention, healthy masculinity, positioning men as partners in building equality. That last bit, because I had to ask men like in taxis, Nikulize, as a man living in Iceland, why is this important to you? And for him, it's like a lot of us don't grapple with the fact that other people in this world see women as other. We don't. We just see them.
Literal existence that you're my fellow human being.
And he was saying it's not 100%. We do still have pockets of GBV. We still have that. But more often than not, we see them as equal. And he's like, we're not even trying to sanitize it. We're not trying to erase the fact that at some point we did see them as less, which is why they had the march in the 70s. But in our minds, we care about each other. And I'm like, this is why every year that forum goes back because they maintain. Because it starts with here. And the moment, I think a lot of the time you'll find a section of men feel, quote unquote, attacked or offended by a conversation. And I think it goes back to the norms. It's like, why are you platforming your issues as if I don't have any? When it's, no, we all have issues. Mine doesn't invalidate yours. How do we work together so that you're less harmed and I'm less harmed?
Another thing I think about, and which tends to, dispatch this norm that, feminists are just crazy women and stuff like that. I don't think people would probably understand that when we talk about gender equality, we're not saying women deserve better than any other. We're literally saying that we all should be treated as human beings and create systems that continue to cater for human beings, right? So when you have a woman giving birth to a child and you give the father 2 weeks only to be with the newborn and go back, yet you have a pregnant woman who might require nurturing and care, rest, while breastfeeding the child, that essentially would, I think, just allowing men to just experience the process of childbirth in itself has changed so many men. I think we've seen even on TikTok, fathers walking out of the maternity room like, I don't think I don't think I could do this. Or these trainings that are happening in the gyms where you're being told, can you try and lift a weight with that, period meter on your stomach, and it's unbearable. And so when we essentially dilute this, they make it very complex, but with these complex issues that women keep saying they are going through, and have men sort of have a taste mentally, psychologically, or physically with what the woman's experience is, maybe that would translate into what the reality of a woman really is.
Yeah, and
that can change the narrative.
I love that. And also speak to the experiences. There's a member of parliament in the UK a few days ago who talked about his own sexual assault. And it was a big moment because he's a member of parliament in the United Kingdom Parliament. What I'm trying to say is he is having the same issue that we're having, because you're fighting against violent people in society. You're not saying you guys are, you're all violent and we're not violent. He's saying, listen, I was sexually assaulted by a man, right? So I'm not trying to stand here to be like, oh, I'm an ally. I'm just saying we actually have to fight against gender-based violence.
It's us against.
It's not us against. It's like I was also a victim. It's about how do we stop violence. Majority of the perpetrators, it's data, it's fact, are men. He now has ended up being a victim in the hands of those men. He's not one of them. He's a victim. And he's saying we need to address gender-based violence collectively. And I think that's where the conversation always needs to go. We have to be careful about not making it men versus women, which is very distractionary. I think, Mariam, you said it. It's about, let's center the violence here, guys. Let's not
Exactly.
This is the problem. It's here. There's men, there's women, there's children. This is what we need to tackle. So how are we all tackling it?
And I like what you said, collectively engaging with this aspect, because when you literally just center the violence and you make it in between a people against these subordinately violent people, because it can be both ways.
Yes.
And when we talk about violent people, let's also have an essence of pedophilia, because we're having a rise of pedophilia in Kenya and generally in the continent. Child sex trafficking is happening. Our borders are micromanaged into us against each other and us separated, while collectively creating spaces where children are being amassed from Sudan, from Congo, into very difficult situations. So when you center the violence as a people, you're not only significantly erasing, or rather putting aside violent people, you're also putting aside violent systems, you're also putting aside violent gaps that continue to exist. So be it religion, be it parents who are still back in societal norms where if you've been beaten by your husband, you're being told, go back, vumilia. Culture and the like. It also allows us to completely separate the one thing that continues to create so much violence between men and women, and which is this indifference that the only thing we can structurally discuss as men and women is how different I am from the other. And centering the violence also allows us an opportunity, when we're looking at solutions, to think about what would a people-centered approach look like. And it would look like definitely having perpetrators punished than the shaming of the victims. In this country, I think, even with how we report in the media, the essence and the sensationalism of the victim, making it a hot story, re-traumatizing the victim, making the victim, and it's okay for us and it's important for us to have these stories, right? But where is the shame and the guilt of the perpetrator? Why is a cycle of burden always very much constituent with the victim? I mean, right now we're having a case and a rise of technologically facilitated gender-based violence, and TFGBV has a very different approach. Now you have things like doxing. whereby I'm not necessarily just shaming you or abusing you digitally. I'm also exposing you to physical threats. So I'm exposing where you live, your children, and I think I was also raising an issue when it came to during the Gen Z protest when we were having the kusalimiana. Because it is a very thin line between keeping people accountable, as we had used it in the protest, and how it structurally became phone number, where your children are, what you do, and we have to separate these things completely because it opened an array. And right now we're talking about a 16 to 58% of women having experienced TFGPV. So the shaming, the same narratives, the shaming, the bodily autonomy attacks, the existence of women is still and now being significantly attracted towards very, very deep fake issues. And I'll give a very good example that I think Kenyans will also relate. When we were doing the finance bill and we had all these imageries connoting politicians, did you notice that the biggest insult to the politicians was them being
in a bikini or a wig? In
a bikini or a bra or the same narratives whereby we look as women as an abusive, like as an abusive terminology that can be used to disregard or disrespect a man is also very clear with the society we live. Watch our mama. Exactly. So there's a way that this continues. The manosphere continues to evolve as we continue to move with the times. But it's very risky where we are at. It's very alarming.
We have like a minute, even less. But I think you've almost begun to sum it up, which is center the violence. TFGBV has different approaches. There's doxing, there's revenge porn, which is really high. And how that's another monster that kind of needs to be checked. 100%. I think we just need to get ahead of these things before they consume us, because it's already building its own sort of like community, but then you have to almost intervene with algorithms, with policymakers, the people behind the apps. For the love of God, you are behind the apps, you built it, you created it. Unadu, how are you making sure that the same person is actually held accountable?
Before we close, I think, and I remember Eric mentioning it, let's welcome men into the podium. Number one, the door was never locked. And maybe something as a change would be, can then men organize within themselves to care for women as much as we do as well? Because we are mothers, we are sisters, we are aunties, we are caregivers, we are the teachers and the doctors, and so are men too. And so when we're speaking about a people problem, I think all people should come together. But importantly, notice even on a month where we have 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and femicide, the 25th begins it with the International Day of the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And even at a primary time when we think about ourselves, we closed on the 10th of December with International Day for Human Rights. So everything that women continue to do is always centered on the aspect that we are screaming, stop killing us, stop murdering us, stop maiming us, stop raping us, and just think as of the world as we do, which is that everyone is basically a human being.
Zaha Indimuli. You will find her tonight on Last Word and on all her platforms. I know, it's like, thank you for the work you do. And I've told you before, I hope you pour into yourself, because this is heavy. This is heavy, so I also hope you self-care. But thank you for, to just continue to shed light on it. So she'll be on the Last Word tonight. We're getting into another conversation in just a few moments with somebody else who's also part and parcel of fighting GBV, but she's also been in the political circles, and we'll talk about how it manifests there. She is called Wanja Maina, NEC member, Jubilee Party, Women, Politics and Gender-Based Violence. That's coming up at the top of the hour. It's a minute to 9 a.m.